Yara didn't know the summons was designed to destroy her. She didn't know that for 5 years, the Alpha King had been told she was dead. A barren, disgraced woman who had thrown herself from the cliffs rather than face her shame. And she definitely didn't know that walking into his great hall with 4 children at her side would unravel a conspiracy that reached the very heart of the throne. All she knew was that the royal messenger stood trembling at her door, holding a scroll sealed with black wax and the crest of the Shadowmere pack. A crest she hadn't seen since the night she'd fled with nothing but the clothes on her back, and a desperate hope growing inside her. The morning had started like any other in Briar Hollow. Yara woke before dawn, as she always did, to the sound of her youngest son talking in his sleep. Wren had inherited her habit of dreaming aloud, mumbling about birds and clouds and the color of the sky. She had learned to find comfort in it over the years, proof that even in sleep, her children were safe. She moved through the small cottage with practiced silence, stoking the fire, setting water to boil, laying out 4 sets of clothes for 4 small bodies that would soon come tumbling down the ladder from the loft. 5 years of this rhythm. 5 years of building a life from nothing. 5 years of looking over her shoulder, waiting for the past to catch up. Today, it finally did. The knock came just as the sun crested the eastern hills. 3 sharp raps, formal and deliberate. Yara's hand froze over the bread she'd been slicing. No one knocked like that in Briar Hollow. The village was too small for formality, too remote for strangers. She wiped her hands on her apron and crossed to the door, her heart already beating faster than it should. When she opened it, the morning light revealed a young man in traveling leathers, dust-covered and pale. Behind him, 2 horses stamped nervously, their breath fogging in the cool air. But it was what he held that made her blood turn to ice. The scroll, the black wax seal, the silver wolf with amber eyes, the sigil of the Shadowmere Alpha. Yara Veldon? The messenger's voice cracked on her name. She hadn't heard that name spoken aloud in 5 years. Here, she was simply Yara, the healer's widow, the quiet woman who kept to herself and raised her children alone. No one knew where she'd come from. No one asked. "You have the wrong person," she said, already stepping back to close the door. "Please." The messenger thrust the scroll forward. "I was told to deliver this and await your response. If I return without one, He swallowed hard. "Please, just read it." The fear in his eyes gave her pause. He was young, barely more than a boy, and he looked at her like she held his life in her hands. Whatever this summons contained, the consequences of failure terrified him. Against every instinct screaming at her to refuse, Yara took the scroll. The wax seal cracked under her thumb, and the parchment unrolled with a whisper that sounded like fate settling into place. The words were written in a hand she didn't recognize, formal, precise, utterly without warmth. By order of Alpha King Tavian Blackmore, sovereign of the Shadowmere Pack and lord of the Northern Territories, you are hereby summoned to appear before the High Court at Ravencrest Keep. You stand accused of crimes against the crown, abandonment of your sacred bond, deception of your alpha, and theft of royal bloodline. You will present yourself within a fortnight to face judgment. Failure to appear will result in execution upon capture. May the moon goddess have mercy on your treacherous soul. Yara read the words twice, 3 times, waiting for them to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Crimes against the crown, theft of royal bloodline. They knew. Somehow, after 5 years, they knew about the children. But it was the last line that made her hands shake. Execution upon capture. Not a trial. Not a chance to explain. Just death. Delivered with the cold efficiency of a regime that had already decided her guilt. "Mama?" The small voice from behind her nearly stopped her heart. Yara spun to find her eldest standing at the bottom of the loft ladder, his gray eyes, his father's eyes, fixed on the messenger with an intensity no 5-year-old should possess. Aaron had always been perceptive, always watching, always understanding more than he should. Now he looked at the stranger in their doorway, at the scroll in his mother's trembling hands, and his small face hardened into something fierce. "Who is he?" Iran demanded. "Why are you scared?" "I'm not scared, little wolf." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "Go back upstairs. Wake your brothers and sister. I'll have breakfast ready soon." Iran didn't move. "You're lying. I can smell it." Of course he could. All four of them could. Another inheritance from their father, another reminder of the blood that ran through their veins, the blood that made them targets. "Iran?" Yara kept her voice steady through sheer force of will. "Upstairs. Now." For a long moment, her son held her gaze with a defiance that was entirely his own. Then he turned and climbed back up the ladder, his small shoulders rigid with tension. Yara waited until she heard the creak of floorboards above before turning back to the messenger. "How did you find me?" "I don't know." His eyes darted nervously toward the loft. "I was given directions, told where to ride. I didn't ask questions." "Who sent you?" "The summons comes from the High Court, but—" He hesitated, lowering his voice. "But the order to find you came from the Dowager Queen herself, Lady Vila Blackmore." The name hit Yara like a physical blow. Vela. Of course. The woman who had orchestrated everything, the lies, the rejection, the exile. The woman who had looked Yara in the eyes and told her she would never be worthy of her son. Who had whispered poison into Tavian's ear until he'd believed every word? 5 years ago, Vila had wanted her dead. Now she was summoning her back. "Why?" Yara breathed. "After all this time, why now?" The messenger shook his head. "I don't know. I'm just the messenger. Please, will you come? If I return without an answer, tell them I'll be there." The words left her mouth before she could stop them, surprising them both. The messenger's eyes went wide. "You'll come? Willingly?" Yara looked down at the scroll in her hands, at the threats and accusations scrawled across expensive parchment. She thought about running, packing her children in the dead of night and fleeing to somewhere even more remote, more hidden. She'd done it once. She could do it again. But running meant living in fear forever. Running meant teaching her children that their very existence was something to be ashamed of. Running meant letting Vela win. And Yara was so very tired of running. "Tell them I'll be there," she repeated. "But tell them this too. I won't be coming alone." The messenger practically fled to his horse, mounting with clumsy haste and spurring the animal down the road. Yara watched him go, the scroll crumpling in her fist, and felt something shift inside her. For 5 years, she'd been hiding, surviving, protecting her children from a truth that would paint targets on their backs. But her children weren't helpless anymore. They were growing, developing abilities that marked them as something rare, something powerful, something that couldn't stay hidden forever. 4 children, 4 alphas, the rarest phenomenon in werewolf history, a multiple birth, where every child carried the alpha gene. It happened maybe once in 1,000 years, spoken of in legends and prophecies. And it had happened to her. Vela had called her barren, had convinced Tavian that Yara was defective, incapable of producing heirs. She'd produced evidence, a healer's testimony, medical records, witnesses who swore they'd seen Yara taking herbs to prevent conception. All lies. Every single word. And now those lies were about to meet 4 living contradictions. All 4 children stood at the base of the ladder now, still in their sleep clothes, their eyes wide and watchful. Iran in front, protective as always. Corvin flanking him, already scowling, his dark hair wild from sleep. Behind them, Celine clutched Ren's hand, her pale eyes seeing far more than any child should. Her babies, her miracles, her reason for everything. "We're going on a journey," Yara said softly, crouching down to their level. "A long one, to a place I used to live, before you were born." "Why?" Corvin demanded. His voice was sharp, suspicious. Of the 4, he trusted the least, questioned the most. Yara hesitated. She'd always known this day would come, The day she'd have to explain who they really were, where they really came from. She'd practiced the words 100 times in her head, but none of them felt right. "Your father is there," she finally said. Silence. 4 small faces stared at her with varying degrees of shock, confusion, and something that might have been hope. "You said our father was dead," Aaron said carefully. "You said he died before we were born." "I know what I said." Yara's voice caught. "I lied to protect you. I'm sorry." "Is he bad?" Ren's small voice trembled. "Is that why you hid us?" "No, sweetheart." Yara pulled her youngest into her arms. "He's not bad. He was lied to, just like you were. People told him things about me that weren't true, and he believed them. And because he believed them, I had to leave." "What kind of things?" Celine asked quietly. She was always quiet, always watching. Of the 4, her perception was the sharpest. They told him I couldn't have children, that I was barren. And now they've found out about you. And they want me to answer for the lie they think I told. "But they're the ones who lied," Iran said, his voice hardening. "Not you." "Yes. So we go and show them the truth." Her eldest straightened his small shoulders, and for a moment, Yara saw a glimpse of the alpha he would become, fierce, righteous, unafraid. "We show them they were wrong about everything." The journey to Ravencrest Keep took 12 days through wilderness paths only Yara remembered from her previous life. Her children adapted to travel with remarkable ease. Iran took charge of navigation, his natural instincts for direction proving sharper than any map. Corvin pushed ahead constantly, restless energy making him scout the path. Celine walked in thoughtful silence, occasionally stopping to touch a tree or stone, her brow furrowing like she was listening to something no one else could hear. And Ren, sweet, dreamy Ren, found wonder in everything, chattering about butterflies and cloud shapes until even Corvin smiled. On the 5th night, camped beside a stream that caught starlight like scattered diamonds, Iran finally asked the question Yara had been dreading. "What's he like? Our father?" She stirred the fire, buying time. Around her, the other 3 had gone still, all pretending to sleep while obviously listening. "He's complicated," Yara said at last. "When I knew him, he was strong, proud. The kind of alpha who commanded respect without demanding it. People followed him because they believed in him, not because they feared him." "Did you love him?" Celine's quiet voice drifted from her bedroll. The question pierced something Yara had kept carefully buried. "Yes. Very much." "Did he love you?" Yara closed her eyes against the memory. Tavian's hands in her hair, his voice rough with emotion as he spoke vows under the full moon. The way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. "I thought he did," she whispered. "Maybe I was wrong. Or maybe he did. But not enough to trust me when it counted." "That's stupid," Corvin said, sitting up abruptly, his young face twisted with anger. "If he loved you, he should have believed you over everyone else. That's what love means." "It's not always that simple, sweetheart." "Yes, it is." Her second son's eyes glowed briefly gold, not a trick of firelight, but genuine alpha manifestation. "Love means you don't give up on someone just because other people tell you to. Love means you fight for them." Yara had no response, because he was right, with the pure, uncomplicated clarity of childhood. Tavian had let her go without a fight, had listened to his mother's poison and believed it without question, had rejected their mate bond so completely that Yara had felt it snap, a pain worse than any physical wound, leaving a scar on her soul that had never fully healed. Whatever had existed between them, it hadn't been enough to save her. Ravencrest Keep rose from the mountains like something carved by gods rather than men. Black stone towers clawed at the sky, their peaks wreathed in perpetual mist. The main gate was forged iron depicting wolves in battle, teeth bared, eyes blazing with inlaid amber that caught the sunlight and threw it back like a warning. 5 years ago, Yara had walked through those gates as a Luna, beloved and honored. She'd worn silk and silver, and the guards had bowed as she passed. Today, she approached in worn traveling clothes, her children clustered around her like a protective formation. The guards didn't bow. They stared. "State your business," the captain demanded, his hand resting on his sword hilt. "My name is Yara Velden. I've been summoned to appear before the High Court." The captain's eyes widened. His gaze dropped to the children, counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, and his face went pale. "Wait here," he managed, then disappeared through a smaller door. Inside, the walk through Ravencrest was a gauntlet of whispers. Servants stopped mid-task to stare. Nobles pressed against corridor walls, their eyes tracking the 4 small figures surrounding Yara. She heard her name hissed from a dozen mouths, heard Baron, followed by gasps of confusion as people counted the children. 1, 2, 3, 4. Impossible. And yet, the great hall doors loomed ahead, ancient oak reinforced with iron, carved with the history of the Blackmore line. Now they opened to her judgment. The hall beyond was vast, lit by chandeliers that dripped crystals like frozen tears. Hundreds of pack members lined the walls, nobles in fine clothes, warriors in formal leathers, servants craning for a glimpse of the disgraced Luna returned from the dead. At the far end, on a raised dais, sat the throne, and on the throne sat Tavian. Yara's breath caught. 5 years had changed him. The young alpha she'd loved had been lean, almost boyish, still growing into his power. The man before her now was carved from harder stone. Broader shoulders, sharper jaw, eyes that held shadows where there had once been light. His dark hair was longer, swept back from a face that had learned to hide its emotions behind an impenetrable mask. But when those eyes found hers across the crowded hall, the mask cracked. She saw recognition first, the jolt of seeing a dead woman walking. Then confusion as his gaze dropped to the children. Then something that might have been pain, quickly smothered. Beside the throne, in a smaller chair that dripped with dark elegance, sat Vela Blackmore. The Dowager Queen had aged like fine poison, still beautiful, still lethal, her silver-streaked hair coiled in elaborate braids around a face that showed nothing but cold satisfaction. She looked at Yara like a spider watching a fly stumble into her web. "The accused will approach," a herald's voice rang out. Yara walked forward, her children matching her pace with eerie synchronization. They moved like a pack, she realized, unconscious formation, each protecting the other's blind spots. Even Ren, the youngest, had fallen into position without being told. They stopped at the base of the dais, 10 feet from the throne, from the man who had once held her heart. "Yara Velden." Tavian's voice was rough, barely controlled. "You were reported dead." Clearly, the reports were wrong. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Yara didn't look away from Tavian's face, watching emotions flicker behind his eyes, too fast to name, too strong to hide completely. "You stand accused of abandoning your mate bond, deceiving your alpha, and—" His voice faltered. His gaze dropped to the children again, and this time, his composure slipped further. "And theft of royal bloodline. I abandoned nothing." Yara's voice rang clear through the hall. "I was driven out, rejected, cast aside based on lies fed to you by people you trusted. You were barren." Vela's voice cut through like a blade. "The healers confirmed it. The records were clear. You were incapable of producing heirs, yet you concealed this from your mate, wasting years of his prime breeding age on a defective—" "I was never barren." Silence crashed through the great hall. Yara stepped aside, revealing her children fully for the first time. 4 small figures standing in a perfect line, their faces lifted toward the throne with expressions ranging from Iran's cold assessment to Corvin's open hostility to Celine's quiet knowing to Ren's trembling courage. "Allow me to introduce my children," Yara said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "Iran, Corvin, Celine, and Ren. They are 5 years old, born 8 months after I fled Ravencrest. born in hiding, raised in exile, kept secret to protect them from the people who wanted me dead." She paused, letting the implication land. "They are not just my children. They are yours, Tavian." The crowd erupted. Shouts, gasps, the scrape of chairs as nobles surged to their feet for a better view. Guards moved to restore order, but the chaos only grew. On the throne, Tavian had gone utterly still. His face was white as bone, his hands gripping the armrests so hard Yara could see his knuckles straining. Beside him, Vila had risen from her chair, her composure finally cracking. "Lies!" she shrieked. "More lies from a barren whore who—" "Mother!" Tavian's voice cracked like a whip, silencing her instantly. He hadn't looked away from the children, from his children. "Be silent." He stood slowly, descending the dais steps with the measured control of a man fighting to hold himself together. The crowd parted before him, pressing back against the walls as their alpha approached the impossible evidence of his greatest mistake. He stopped in front of Iron first. Father and son stared at each other. The same gray eyes, the same stubborn jaw, the same way of holding themselves like they were bracing against a storm. "Your name," Tavian said hoarsely. "Iran." Her eldest didn't flinch, didn't bow, and didn't show an ounce of deference. "I'm the oldest. You have my eyes. I have my mother's courage. I don't know what I have of yours." The words landed like a slap. Tavian flinched, actually flinched, and Yara saw something shatter behind his expression. He moved to Corvin next, who glared up at him with undisguised hostility. "You hurt her," Corvin said before Tavian could speak. "You made her cry. I heard her, at night, when she thought we were sleeping." "Corvin," Yara started. "No." Her second son's eyes flashed gold, bright and unmistakable, the manifestation of alpha power, impossibly young, impossibly strong. He should know. He should know what he did. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Alpha eyes in a child, at 5 years old. Unheard of. Tavian took a step back, his own eyes flickering gold in response. Instinctive recognition of another alpha. His son. His alpha son. Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. He looked at Celine next, who met his gaze with an unsettling calm. "You're very sad," she said softly. "Underneath all the anger, you're so sad. You've been sad for a long time." Tavian's throat worked. "How do you—" "I see things." Celine's pale eyes seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Feel things. Mama says it's a gift. I think it's just paying attention." Finally, he reached Ren, the youngest, the smallest, trembling but refusing to hide behind his siblings. Tavian crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's level, and his voice dropped to something broken. "Hello, little one." "Hello." Ren's voice was barely a whisper. "Are you really our father?" "I—" Tavian closed his eyes. "Yes, I think I am." "Then why did you send Mama away? Didn't you want us?" The question hung in the air, innocent and devastating. And Yara watched as the Alpha King, the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories, crumbled. "I didn't know." His voice cracked. "I didn't know you existed. I thought— I was told." He turned to look at Yara and his eyes were wet. "What have I done?" "You believed lies over your own mate bond." Yara's voice was steady, but it cost her everything to keep it that way. "You rejected me publicly, broke our bond, and left me with nothing. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after I fled. I've spent 5 years raising your children alone, hiding from the people who wanted me dead, and protecting them from a father who didn't know they existed." She stepped forward, and the crowd seemed to hold its breath. "So yes, Tavian, what have you done?" He rose slowly, facing her. They stood inches apart now, close enough that she could see the rapid pulse at his throat, smell the familiar scent that still made something ache deep in her chest. "Who told you I was barren?" she asked quietly. "Who showed you the evidence? Who convinced you to reject your fated mate?" Tavian's gaze slid to the dais, to the smaller throne, to the woman who had risen to her feet with fury twisting her beautiful face. "Mother," he breathed, "what did you do?" The great hall had gone deathly silent, every eye fixed on the Dowager Queen, who stood beside her empty throne like a statue carved from ice. "Tavian." Vela's voice was honey over broken glass. "You cannot possibly believe this woman's lies. She appears after 5 years with 4 children and claims they're yours? Any man could have fathered them. She was always—" Their eyes turned gold, Mother. Tavian's voice was hollow. "Alpha gold. In children who haven't even had their first shift. Do you understand how rare that is? How impossible? Coincidence. A trick of the light. I felt it." Tavian turned to face his mother fully. When the boy's eyes changed, I felt the pack bond try to form. My wolf recognized him, recognized all of them. Vela's composure flickered. Just for a moment. But Yara caught it. Fear. Real fear. Poorly hidden beneath layers of practiced arrogance. "Desperation," Vela snapped. "She has no proof." "Actually," a new voice rang out, "she does." The crowd parted as a figure emerged from the shadows near the hall's entrance. An old woman, bent with age but moving with surprising purpose, her gray hair escaping from a simple braid. Yara's breath caught. "Hesta?" The old woman smiled, her weathered face creasing with warmth. "Hello, child. Did you think I'd let you face this alone?" "Who is this?" Tavian demanded. "Hesta Greymore. I was the royal healer for 32 years, before your mother had me retired." The old woman's aged eyes found the Alpha King. "I delivered you, boy. Changed your swaddling clothes, treated your fevers and set your broken bones. And I examined your mate the day before she was cast out." The hall erupted in whispers. Vela had gone pale. "You were dismissed," the Dowager Queen said tightly. "Your testimony means nothing." "I was dismissed because I refused to lie." Hesta's voice cracked like thunder. "Your mother came to me the night before the trial, offered me gold, more gold than I'd seen in my entire life, to confirm that Yara was barren. When I refused, she threatened my family. When I still refused, she had me removed and replaced with someone who would say anything for coin. She reached into her cloak and withdrew a leather satchel. But I kept records. Real records. My examination notes, dated and sealed, proving Yara was perfectly healthy. A sample of the moon tea the witnesses claimed she drank. Nothing but colored water. Letters between your mother and the false healer discussing payments. And," she paused, "a draft of the rejection speech your mother wrote for you, Tavian. Word for word what you said to your mate the day you cast her out." The silence was absolute. Yara remembered that speech. Every word burned into her memory like a brand. She'd always wondered how Tavian, her Tavian, who had once whispered poetry against her skin, could have spoken with such calculated cruelty. Now she knew. The words had never been his. "Is this true?" Tavian's voice was barely a whisper. He turned to his mother. "Did you write what I said to her? Did you put those words in my mouth?" Vila's chin lifted defiantly. "I did what was necessary to protect this family." "Protect?" The word exploded from Tavian. "You destroyed my mate. You drove away my children. You let me believe I was bonded to a woman who had deceived me." "She was common, Tavian. A nobody with no political value. I had alliances arranged that would have strengthened our position tenfold. I expected you to respect my choice." "Your choice was wrong." Vila's composure shattered. "Love is a weakness kings cannot afford. So you took it from me." Tavian's voice went quiet, dangerously quiet. "You took my mate, my children, 5 years of my life. You made me into someone who could speak those words, believe those lies." He looked at her like he was seeing a stranger. "You made me into a monster. I made you a king. You made me alone." The roar shook the chandeliers. Yara felt her children press closer. This wasn't what she'd expected. She'd prepared for Tavian's denial, his defense of his mother, his refusal to believe he'd been manipulated. She hadn't prepared for his devastation to mirror her own. "Lady Vela Blackmore," Tavian said, his voice carrying royal authority, "you stand accused of conspiracy against the crown, falsification of evidence, corruption of royal officials, and treason. You will be confined pending formal trial. Guards, take her." "Tavian, you can't. Take her." Guards bound Viola's hands as she screamed, "Everything I did was for you. That woman will destroy you." The doors slammed shut behind her, cutting off her words. The nobles filed out in whispered clusters, leaving the great hall empty except for Yara, her children, and Tavian. He still hadn't turned around. "Children," Yara said gently, "go with the guard outside. Ask him to show you to the kitchens." "We're not leaving you," Iran said firmly. "Not with him. He won't hurt me. I need to talk to him alone. Can you give me that time?" After a long moment, Iran nodded and led his siblings away. Then she was alone with Tavian. He turned slowly, and Yara's breath caught at the devastation on his face. This wasn't the cold, controlled Alpha King who had sat on the throne. This was a man drowning in the wreckage of everything he'd believed. "I don't know where to start." His voice was hoarse. "I don't know how to apologize for this. What words exist for what I did to you? I don't know. I believed her. My own mother." He pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes. "She gave me a script, and I performed it perfectly. Every cruel word, every accusation. I begged you to listen. I told you the healer's testimony was false. I offered to be examined again. Don't you remember?" "I remember." His voice was barely audible. "I said that a liar's word meant nothing, that you'd already proven you couldn't be trusted, that I was ashamed to have ever called you mate." The words hung between them, as painful now as they'd been 5 years ago. "I went to the cliffs that night." Yara's voice was steady, but it cost her. "After you rejected me, after the guards threw me out with nothing but the clothes on my back, I walked to the northern cliffs. I stood at the edge and looked down at the rocks." Tavian made a wounded sound. "I thought about jumping. For about an hour, I seriously considered it." She met his eyes unflinchingly. "Do you understand what you did to me, Tavian? You made me want to die." "Yara, I'm not finished." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. "The only reason I stepped back from that edge was because I felt something. A flutter, so small I almost missed it. Life, growing inside me. Your children, already fighting to exist." Tears were streaming down Tavian's face now. "So I ran. I walked for weeks until I found a village remote enough that no one would know my face. I gave birth alone in a stranger's cottage. I raised 4 children by myself, teaching them to hide what they were, to suppress their wolves, to never mention their father because the truth was too dangerous." She stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse hammering in his throat. "That's what you did to me, Tavian. That's the weight you carry now. So when you ask how to apologize, I don't have an answer. Because I don't know if any apology could ever be enough." "Then what do you want?" His voice broke. "Tell me what to do." "Anything, Yara. I'll give you anything." "I don't know what I want." The admission surprised her. "I came here expecting to fight, expecting you to deny everything, defend your mother, call me a liar again. I prepared myself for that battle." She looked at him. Really looked, seeing past the crown and the power to the broken man beneath. "I didn't prepare for this." "For what?" "For you to be as destroyed by this as I was." "I've been destroyed since the day you left. I just didn't know why." Before she could respond, a scream split the air. High, terrified, young, Ren. They burst through the great hall doors to find chaos in the corridor. Viola Blackmore stood at the intersection of 2 hallways, a knife pressed to Ren's throat. Her eyes were wild, her careful composure utterly gone. Somehow she'd escaped her guards. "Nobody move!" Viola's voice was shrill. "One step closer and I'll open his throat." "Let him go." Yara's voice came out strange, too calm and too controlled. "Vela, let him go." Why should I? So you can take everything from me? My son? My position? My legacy? They're your grandchildren. Tavian stepped forward slowly, hands raised. Mother, please, don't. Vela pressed the knife harder, and a thin line of red appeared on Ren's neck. You just had me arrested. You chose her over your own mother. You lied to me. I protected you. Ren whimpered, and Yara felt something inside her snap. Mama. Ren's voice was barely a whisper. I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. Yara forced her voice to steady. You're going to be okay, I promise. She can't promise that. Vila's smile was cruel. She's powerless here, just like she's always been. Let go of my brother. Irin stood at the far end of the corridor, Corvin and Celine flanking him. They faced their grandmother with expressions that held no trace of childish fear. You won't hurt him, Celine said, eerily calm. I can feel it. You're bluffing. Am I? Vila pressed the blade, drawing another thin line of blood. Ren cried out. Stop! Yara lurched forward, but guards held her back. No, you won't. Irin stepped forward, his gray eyes beginning to glow. Not flickering this time, but steady. Twin points of molten gold that seemed to light the dim corridor. Because if you hurt our brother, we'll kill you. This wasn't a child threatening an adult. This was an alpha making a promise. Corvin's eyes ignited next, then Celine's, gold and silver mingling, their combined power building like a storm about to break. Even Ren, still caught in Vela's grip, had stopped crying. His eyes flickered once, twice, then held steady. 4 pairs of alpha eyes, blazing in the darkness. Vela faltered. The knife trembled in her grip. Impossible, she breathed. 4 alphas? That's just a legend. It's real. Tavian stepped forward and his own eyes began to glow. Let him go. For a long moment, nothing moved. Vila's wild eyes darted between the glowing gazes surrounding her. 4 children, 1 alpha king, all focused on her with lethal intent. Then her grip loosened. Ren twisted free, darting to Yara's arms. She caught him, clutching him so tight he squeaked, pressing her face into his hair and breathing in his scent. Safe. He was safe. The knife clattered to the floor. I did it for you, Vila whispered as guards bound her hands. Everything. Always. For you. Take her away. Tavian's voice held no emotion. Maximum security. No visitors, no weapons. Yara sank to the floor, her children surrounding her. Ren buried his face in her shoulder, sobbing. Iran pressed against her back. Corvin positioned himself between her and the corridor. Celine curled into her side. Tavian watched them for a long moment. This family he'd lost. This family he didn't deserve. This family that had protected each other against his own mother. Then he quietly turned and walked away, leaving them to their comfort. He understood in that moment that he had no right to be part of it. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. 3 months passed. Yara had expected Tavian to push, to demand time with the children, insert himself into their lives, use his authority to force a reconciliation. She'd prepared defenses against it, rehearsed refusals, built walls. She never needed them. Instead, Tavian did something she hadn't anticipated. He waited. He gave them an entire wing of Ravencrest Keep, private quarters with a garden courtyard, far from the bustle of court life. He assigned servants who answered only to Yara, guards who protected without intruding. He sent gifts for the children, books for Iran, wooden practice swords for Corvin, pressed flowers and art supplies for Celine, a collection of carved animals for Ren. Each gift came with a simple note. He never asked for anything in return. He's trying, Celine observed one evening. Really trying. Trying isn't enough, Corvin muttered, practicing sword forms. Gifts are easy. He hasn't asked us for anything, Eren pointed out. That's strategy. He's being patient so we let our guard down. Or he's being respectful, Celine said quietly. Silence fell over the room. Ren, playing with his carved animals, looked up with troubled eyes. The thin scar on his neck had healed to a faint pink line, barely visible, but none of them had forgotten how it got there. "She's gone now," Yara said softly from the doorway. "Vila's trial concluded this morning. She's been exiled to a remote holding in the northern mountains, stripped of title and privilege." "Good," Corvin said fiercely. "Do you want to know him?" she asked carefully. "Any of you? It's your choice. I won't force you either way." The children exchanged glances, that silent communication they'd developed in the womb. Finally, Iran spoke. "I want to hear his perspective. No excuses, but what he thought was happening while we were growing up without him." "I want to fight him," Corvin said. "In training. I want to see what he's actually made of." "I want to walk in the gardens," Celine said quietly. They looked at Ren, clutching a carved wolf, one of Tavian's childhood toys. "I want to ask if he would have loved us," the youngest said. "If he'd known." Yara felt tears prick her eyes. Her children were braver than she was. "Then we'll arrange it, one step at a time, at your pace, on your terms." The first meeting was awkward. They gathered in a small courtyard, Tavian on one side, the children on the other, Yara between them. Ren broke the silence. "Why do you have gray eyes like us?" Tavian blinked. "It's a Blackmore trait. My father had them. His father before him. Mama says they're striking. She says we'll break hearts someday." Tavian's gaze flickered to Yara, something pained crossing his face. "Your mother would know about that." "What does that mean?" "It means she broke mine, though I suppose I broke hers first." "You did," Corvin said sharply. "You broke a lot of things." "I know, and I can't undo any of it. I can only tell you that if I'd known the truth, I would have torn the world apart to find you." Pretty words. "Test me any way you want. I'll prove it." Corvin's eyes narrowed. "Fight me." In the training yard, Tavian faced his son with wooden swords. He calibrated his strength, pushing just enough to challenge without overwhelming. And Corvin was good, all instinct and aggression. Tavian took the hits. The ones he could have blocked, he let through. "Who taught you?" Tavian asked. "Oh, Mama. She kept us alive, protected us." Corvin's eyes flashed gold. "Do you know what it's like to watch your mother work until her hands bleed? To hear her crying at night?" Tavian lowered his sword. "You're right. I know I'm right. So hit me again, as many times as you need. I won't block." Corvin stood frozen. Then he dropped the sword and walked away, shoulders shaking. The weeks that followed brought slow progress. Corvin demanded rematches twice weekly, his rage transforming into something controlled. Iran spent hours in the archives with Tavian, debating history. Celine's garden walks became rituals, and Ren simply decided to love his father. "Papa," he called Tavian one afternoon. The word stopped everyone in the room. Ren didn't notice, chattering about butterflies, but Tavian's face. Yara had to look away from the raw hope in his expression. 6 months after arriving at Ravencrest, Yara stood on the battlements at sunset. Tavian approached but kept his distance. "The children are asleep." They watched the sky bleed orange over the mountains. "Vela sent a letter from exile," he said, "asking forgiveness." "What did you do?" "Burned it." He paused. "She was planning to have you killed, Yara. There were men waiting at the bottom of the cliffs in case you survived the fall." Yara's blood went cold. "You saved yourself. The only reason you're alive is because you ran faster than she anticipated. I ran because of the babies. They saved you. And now they've saved me too." He took a breath. "I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I'm asking you to let me keep trying, however long it takes. What if I never get there? Then I'll have spent my life trying to be worthy of something I can never have, and it will still be worth it." Yara felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't love you. Not the way I did before. That love died the day you spoke those words. I understand. But something new is growing. I don't know what it is yet. Hope flickered in his eyes. Ask me to stay, she said. Not as your mate. Just ask me to stay while I figure out what this feeling means. Yara, stay, please. However you want. Just stay. No promises. I don't need promises. And if I decide to leave, then I'll help you pack. I'll give you enough gold to live comfortably forever, and I'll let you go. He paused. But I'll never stop hoping you come back. She found nothing but sincerity in his face. Okay, I'll stay. For now. He didn't reach for her, didn't push for more, and just stood there with tears streaming down his face. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was a beginning. 1 year later, the bonding ceremony was held at sunset, on the battlements where they'd begun finding their way back. No crowd, no spectacle. Just Yara in a simple white dress, Tavian in formal leathers, and 4 children as witnesses. I choose you, Tavian said. Not because of duty or expectation. I choose you because you survived when you should have broken. Because you raised our children with more love than I could have imagined. Because you taught me what it means to earn something instead of demanding it. I choose you, she replied, because you became someone worth choosing. Because you fought for our children with patience instead of power. Because you waited. I'd have waited forever. I know. That's why I didn't make you. The new bond snapped into place, different from before, built on harder foundations. Not naive love, but something tempered. Something that knew the cost of breaking and chose wholeness anyway. Tavian kissed her softly. Finally, Corvin muttered. Corvin, Iran hissed. What? We've been waiting months for them to stop being stubborn. They weren't being stubborn, Celine said. They were being careful. Ren pushed forward and wrapped his arms around both parents. Does this mean we're a real family now? Yara crouched down. We were always a real family, sweetheart. This just makes it official. Official is good. Can we have cake now? Tavian laughed. A real laugh, full and warm. Yes, we can have cake. They walked into the castle together, all 6 of them. Any regrets? Tavian murmured. Yara thought about the pain, the struggle, the months of rebuilding. No, every step brought us here. She looked at their children, Iran debating with a servant, Corvin eyeing the cake, Celine examining flower arrangements, Ren tugging at Tavian's hand. I wouldn't change any of it. Even the hard parts? Especially the hard parts. They made us who we are. Tavian raised her hand to his lips. I love you, Yara. I love you too. It just took us a while to get here. Worth the wait? She looked at everything they'd built. A family forged in fire, tested by betrayal, stronger for all of it. Worth everything, she said. And she meant it. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts on Yara and Tavian's story. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe. It's free and helps more people discover these stories. Until next time.